Great track from the Tale of the Tape, Billy Squier's debut solo album from 1980, You Should Be High Love. It's EddieTrunk with Billy Squier here in the studio. Just loving this opportunity to go back into Billy's career with him and talk about all these great stories and his evolution, getting us to the point where we're about to embark on things exploding with Billy and an album called Don't Say No. As we close out Tale of the Tape, what were you thinking as you were getting ready to make Don't Say No? Was there pressure on you? Because at this point you had made 3 major label albums and the real breakthrough hadn't come. Did you feel any heat, or what was your mindset going into Don't Say No?
No, I was feeling pretty good because, as I said, I had this radio success with You Should Be High Love. And then I went out and did a nice tour with Alice Cooper, which I felt really good about. Because we get along really well, and
Alice is the best guy. Yeah,
Alice has got a lot of credibility, and he was good enough to, or prescient enough to feel that he wanted to take me out. So, I felt good about that. I thought I was in a good spot. I felt like I was in a good spot. I didn't feel cocky or arrogant, but I felt that I was getting there. I was making progress.
And the songs, as you start to formulate the songs that would become Don't Say No, how does that work? Are you doing that while you're on tour for Tale of the Tape? How do you write? Or you just sit down and say, I got a record to write, let me lock the door and write it?
It's a little bit of both. When you're on the road, when I'm on the road, at least in the days when I used to warm up before a show, or we used to go, you'd go and you'd tune up and you'd noodle around and play. And so I'd always just have a little tape recorder, because you could invariably come up with riffs when you're just goofing around, and some of them are great, so you want to put them down. But you put them down and you forget about it, and you throw the tape in your pocket or whatever. And then when you go to make a record, you pull all those tapes out and say, what have I got? And you start listening through until you think, oh, that's good. Make a song out of that. So I'm sorry, I got a little bit distracted explaining that. Your question, did I answer it?
Yeah, pretty much. So you the combination of writing Don't Say No happened both on the road and just as a focus thing for the studio.
Got it. Now I'm back. Yeah. So when I sit down to write that or any record that back then, I would kind of pull out the bits and pieces. I would always have a notebook. If I'm talking to someone and I hear a phrase I like, I'd write it down. If I got something I thought was a good title, I would write it down. And it'd be bits and pieces. It'd be like putting a puzzle together. When you'd sit down to make the record, you'd have my little cassette with my musical ideas, and I'd have my song titles and stuff, and I'd say, what goes together or what hangs together, and and then I'd have to work to fill in all the blanks. But the bulk of the writing came right before was done right before I recorded it. That was a process. I'd pull it together and then go in and give it to the band and get in and do it.
And I would imagine one of the big payoffs now, because here you are as a solo artist, full-fledged, is that you talked earlier when we talked about Piper and the bands you were in previous to going solo, you always had to worry about concessions to what the other guys were thinking, who wanted to do this. You wanted to kind of carry the load. One of the things you were able to do from album 1 to 2 is really kind of clean the slate, because you had different players as your backing band, a different producer. So you could do all that as a solo artist, I would think, without having to worry about any guilt or issues or drama.
Oh yeah, no, I was the man. I had complete control over the situation, and Capitol gave me complete control.
And what influenced your team, so to speak, that you put together around you to create Don't Say No? We talked earlier about Mac, your co-producer, who was a guy from the Giorgio Moroder world, but he came on your radar. And the other guys that you decided to have back you on Don't Say No, Bobby was the one holdover on drums.
Yeah, Bobby was the lock.
Right. But the other guys, was it just a case of just wanting to have some fresh people around?
I don't remember, to be honest. It could have been that someone wasn't available, so I got somebody else. I don't want to say it's a blur. Just I don't recall the specifics of how. I remember that Mark Clark, who played bass on that beautifully, lived in the same apartment building as a friend of mine who had worked for Elektra and who had helped me on Tale of the Tape. So. It could have been in the hallway one night. I could have seen Mark and been talking to him and we hit it off. Do you want to come down?
Right.
I can't really tell you any concrete stories about how that happened, but Alan St. John had played in the band in Tail the Tape when I took the band out. He didn't play on the record. He didn't play on the record, but he came on in the touring band. And it's a great player, and so he stayed. So he and Bobby were there.
Much like Jeff Golub, who would join you on the touring band for Don't Say No, would be a fixture for a long time with you on your records.
That's right.
What do you remember about the recording of this record? You recorded some of it in Germany?
We recorded most of it. No, we recorded it really in New York at Power Station, which was a great studio that I used for a lot of records. But
just condos now, I think.
No, it's still there. It's called Avatar now.
Okay. I'm thinking of Hit Factory.
Hit Factory's
condos.
Yeah, you can live in Diana Ross's bathroom. Not sure I'd want to live in Diana Ross's bathroom. Power Station is one block south of the Hit Factory. But terrific studio, and I did a lot of records there. We recorded it there, and then Mac and I mixed it in Germany.
Okay.
And so in the process of mixing it, we did a little recording, like the beginning of In the Darks, the sounds. We put sounds on it, but the band, the music was essentially done in New York.
Do you feel that Don't Say No is your best album? Because a lot of people do.
Certainly my most successful.
Right. But that doesn't mean it's, from the artist standpoint, they always feel it's their best.
I think how should I say? It may be my best in that it's really cohesive. I mean, I think you play it from the first second to the end. It is a extremely cohesive piece of work to me. I think it is a real album. I think my other ones are too, but this one really is. So we could go on. Could I say I have other songs from other records that I think are as good? Sure. We'll get to that. But at the risk of sounding really, egotistical, Don't Say No is a great record. It really stands the test of time, and it's pretty hard to find anything to pick apart on it. So if someone says to me it's my best record, I don't say, "Oh, you're crazy." It's like, yeah, it certainly could be.
If a kid comes up to you and says, "Billy, I want to learn about your career. What Billy Squier album should I buy first?"
I tell him, Don't Say No. I do. I tell him, Don't Say No.
And then the first single from Don't Say No, was it In the Dark?
No, it was The Stroke.
The Stroke. And was it a hit out of the box? Like, was it an immediate smash?
Well, no, but it did pretty well. The record company didn't even want it on the record. They thought that it was a weak song, and they thought that I had better stuff. First, they didn't want it on the record, but because they kind of let me do what I want, I just said it's going to be on the record. It's really unique. My feeling was there's nothing like this, and it's going to be again, for whatever I know, if I know anything, this is going to be a hit. This is going to wake people up. But they didn't want to put it out. They wanted to put out, typically they wanted to put out a ballad. They wanted to put out, what's the ballad? I Need You. On the second to the last song. On the
right. Or, no, I thought you were going to say Nobody Knows, which is the real ballad.
No, the one before. I
Need You is after it.
They wanted I Need You. And no. That's it. Not because it's not a good song. It's just a regular song. We got to put out The Stroke. And they didn't want to do it. So there was a guy, the head of FM promotion at the time, it's called FM promotion, was a guy named Ray Tuscan, and he was a big supporter, and he really was the kind of guy who listened at least to my stuff. So he said, why don't we do this thing? Why don't we day part it? And day parting was a thing where you could go to a big station on the weekend. They wouldn't play the song in rotation during the whole week, but on the weekends they would play it. So if you go to them and say, could you play the Stroke on Saturday and Sunday?
Or you could day part it nights only after 7 p.m.
Yeah, whatever, right. However it would work. So that's how they did it. And they did it. They targeted some markets, did like Detroit, Cleveland, the rock markets, and the thing exploded. And the thing just went, the phones went off the hook.
And how quickly did you call Capitol and say, "Told you so"?
I didn't have to. You don't have to.
Suddenly they're your best friends, though, right?
They knew, they called it all along, But But you don't need to point a finger at that point.
Right.
When it's happening, you don't really care how it got there. So,
And how did you personally handle that level of success? I mean, again, I was in high school when Don't Say No came out, but I worked at a college radio station while I was in high school. As I told you earlier, I don't know if it was on or off the air, but Don't Say No was one of the first albums I ever queued up. Again, we're going back to vinyl on radio on a turntable. And I remember I didn't know anything about it. I just queued up the first track, and that whole opening swell of In the Dark, and then it just exploded in the speakers, and I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible, But you, as an artist who had been around for a little while at this point and was working at it, suddenly, when I was working in a record store, suddenly Billy Squier posters are coming in, the posters of the album cover, and you're the pinup guy, and you've got these live clips on MTV of all these songs, and everyone's talking about Billy Squier. The album's going through the roof. How did you handle what seemed to some people as an overnight success? Did you personally handle it well? Did you go into some crazy ego maniac mode? Did you get into drugs severely? I don't ever remember you being an out of control guy in that regard. I never remember hearing stories about you like that, unless I'm mistaken.
Oh, there's some great stories.
Do share.
We neither support or dispel.
We're on satellite radio. Keep that in mind.
No, I think I handled it well. Look, it was a great time, and I had a lot of fun with it.
Who were you on the road with for Don't Say No? What was the touring like before you did your own shows?
That was kind of fun. What we sat down to do was we wanted to try to get the biggest popular acts out. That was the
to
plan.
Open for you, or were you still opening for them at this point?
No, my agent was Frank Barcelona at the time at Premiere, and we devised this plan. We were going to he had a tremendous influence, and to get me on the biggest bills, the biggest artists that we could do. And it was great for me because my band, I had a great band. I had a tremendous amount of momentum. I had to be careful now because I've become very immodest. We had tremendous opportunities to showcase this music, whether it was playing with Journey or Pat Benatar or REO. But all those bands were very big then. These are the top rock acts in the country. We played, and we got to do that, and then we culminated after playing a bunch of those dates. We did the 4 and 4 tour,
right?
And that did so much for me. I can't say. It was just the opportunities that presented for me really, really catapulted the record to another place. And you were one of the first guys that I remember at the time of Don't Say No having a concert video, the Live in the Dark, I believe it was called, both on TV, and then I actually had the plastic VHS clamshell case, VCR tape of it. Yeah. And that was pretty cool to have. I mean, now, of course, everybody does a DVD or a live show, but to have that back then was pretty cool. I mean, and that's a great document from this period, I would think. Yeah, that was done at Santa Monica Civic. Mm-hmm. Were you happy with it at the time? Did you think it was a good representation? I didn't pay that much attention to it. I mean, I was moving pretty fast then. It was recorded, and I don't think it didn't come out for a while. I don't think. But, no, I'm happy. I think it's good. I think it's very good. But as I said, I was moving pretty fast. We were on tour, and then I was, I came off the road and made Emotions. Right. Went back out on the road again. So, no, I'm happy with that. I think that's a good. One of the few snippets of stuff that that exists in its entirety that paints a pretty good picture of the band at that time. Billy Squier is my guest here on EddieTrunk Live, Sirius XM The Boneyard. The 30th anniversary of Billy's landmark album, Don't Say No, is next year, but you can get the 30th anniversary edition now, which is available in stores, online, wherever you buy CDs still these days. Tell folks about this particular version of the record, remastered, some new liner notes, a couple extra tracks. Tell everybody what you got
what you did to it.
You just did it.
But did you can get more detail than that.
I mean, first of all, I would say that that with a record like this, it's about the record. Don't Say No, as it was done, is what this is about. The extra stuff, sure, it's great to give somebody something extra, and it's fine to do, but it's really, the fact that Shout Factory wanted to put this out is what really matters to me, that, that they would think enough of it to want to do it. And that's still the focus, but we put a couple of bonus tracks on it, a couple of things from the tour last year, which songs from Don't Say No that I performed. So that's there. John Astley remastered it, the same cat we were talking about who did Tail the Tape, who's a terrific English mastering engineer and works with the likes of Pete Townsend and The Who and the Stones and, some of those people you may have heard of.
Yeah.
So he did that, and my friend Ben Edmonds, who is a school chum of mine and has gone on to become a great rock writer and actually worked at EMI and was responsible for getting me my demo stint at Capitol, which got basically Ben kind of set up my record contract. He came in and wrote the liner notes for it, and he knows me better than anybody, at least in this part of my world. So that's a nice piece. Bobby Chenard's nephew Roger, who's my unofficial archivist, threw us a few pictures that hadn't been used before. Mm-hmm. So there's the bells and whistles, the usual things are there. But as I said, the main thing is you want to get your old copy of Don't Say No is either trashed or near it, and you should get another one because it's worth having.
Yeah, and it's also, as you said, I mean, you've I think what's great about this being remastered is that sometimes you get albums that are remastered, and I've actually heard them where the artist isn't involved or hasn't approved it, and it doesn't sound as good. It sounds just over compressed and sounds like a mess, and everything's slammed, and it's just a volume war, to get it louder and louder. This thing sounds great. It really does.
And it's also different from the original. I think that if I had gone in to remaster it myself, I probably wouldn't have changed it. That's the way I did it. So, but I had a lot of faith in John from what he did. What he did, Tail the Tape, I was not involved, and he sent it to me, and it just blew me out of my living room. So, I know that he knows his stuff, and I went over there and did it with him. But he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "You do it," and then let me listen. And so basically, I just tweaked a few things and commented. And he had a different approach to it than what I did when I did it originally. But I trusted him, and I felt like, let me listen to this a few times. And let's say I made a couple little changes here or there. And I said, "You like it?" And he goes, "Yeah, this is where I think it should be, 21st century. This is today." So I said, "Okay, let's go."
And before we
he gets, if you like it, he gets the credit. If you don't like it, it's his fault.
Right. Before we play something from Don't Say No, we all know, and anybody listening probably has a copy of this record in one form or another in their collection that's, was into rock and roll in the early 80s. What happened? We all know this blew up in America and 3, 4, 5 hits on this thing. Outside of America, how was Don't Say No received? Did it get anything internationally?
No, I mean, and that's been one of the sort of unanswered questions to me. I don't consider myself an American music artist. I don't. When you listen, a lot of people, I say most people think I'm English when they hear my music, and probably because I have so many English influences in it. But no, I mean, we have pockets of fans around the world, but it didn't really. I mean, The Stroke was a hit in a lot of countries, but I don't think the record was particularly successful anywhere, and none of my records were, and I never know why. I don't know why.
Right. And
I'm completely miffed because I don't see any reason why that should be so. But we never experienced the success we had in the States.
Yeah, and the song "Nobody Knows" on here, obviously John Lennon was killed. Was a year before you recorded this record, right?
John Lennon was killed the night I was recording that record.
The night you recorded "Don't Say No,"
yeah.
Because I know on the original version that "Nobody Knows" was dedicated to him.
Yeah, I was told that 5 in the morning, 4 in the morning, I was at Power Station finishing that song.
So that's what
someone came in and said Lennon was just been shot, and I had written the song about him one of the days that I was standing with him in front of the Dakota where he lives, and realizing after we parted ways that he went into this building, I looked at the building and I said, nobody knows what it's like when he walks in that building, and that's where that song came from.
Wow.
That nobody knows what it's like. And I just expanded on that. So I had written the song about him, or inspired by that that encounter with him. But I dedicated it to him. Well, partly because I probably would not have dedicated it to him had he not been killed, and I wish I didn't have to dedicate it to him.
Of course.
But that's why I did the dedication, because it literally happened as I was doing it, and I felt, what can you, those things like that happen. What can you do? Nothing. Right. So I just put it down.
And you knew John Lennon fairly well? Or?
No, I didn't know him fairly well, but I would bump into him because he was in New York. I think he liked New York because he could be outside, for the most part.
Right.
So I would see him, and we'd chat a little bit, but no, we weren't friends. But,
right.
We're friendly.
Right.
But I wasn't in his circle. He didn't invite me over for tea or anything like that. It wasn't. We were not like me and Ringo.
Right. Who you played with recently. Yeah. And again, on these on Billy Squier's Don't Say No, there are also 2 tracks that were recorded from the Don't Say No period, but recorded live on a tour you did last year, which it's insanely agonizing to me that I missed all of those shows, because every single show that you did, I had some sort of conflict in my schedule and I couldn't get to. And I was speaking to Judy, your assistant forever, and I said, what's the date here? And every time I looked at my calendar, I had some conflict. So I'm glad you've documented them in some degree on this. But before we play something from Don't Say No, did you enjoy, because you hadn't gone out as a full Billy Squier electric show in a long time before last year, something you want to do more of, something we're going to see more of down the line? Hopefully.
I would think so. I had a blast, because I did something that I'd never done before, which was I decided that I wanted to do, much like we're doing tonight, I wanted to do something that drew from every period of my recorded history.
Which killed me even more when I heard it and I wasn't there.
And the only way I could do it, really was to play alone, so I could play long enough to play all these songs. And there's, I pulled out a bunch of songs that were not hits, because I felt that if I played by myself, that everybody who came was coming to see me, and they would appreciate it. So I didn't have to get into that thing of, I got to play The Stroke, I got to play In the Dark, I got to play, I played some of them, but I didn't play them all.
Right.
And I played things that I really liked. I played the, part of the song that Freddie Mercury and I wrote, and that's actually something he wrote and I sang it. And, I just took things that I felt would hang together and make a great show, but a lot of it was stuff that I hadn't done before. So I loved it, and the band was great. It's a fantastic band, and a lot of the old crew came out, and it was really very very gratifying to me.
Well, I know that you need to be out of here in about 15 minutes, so I'd love to play something from Don't Say No, but I want to, if that's the case, I want to continue our discussion, because I could play the music after you leave.
I can give you a few more minutes. You can play a song.
All right, let's play.
People may be getting tired of us rabbiting here.
This is, you know what? If anyone's tired of it, tough, because I've been doing radio for 27 years. This one's for me, folks. So shut up and deal with it.
No, let's play something.
I'm having fun.
Play something, and then
what do you? I mean, look, the obvious stuff.
We don't have to play the hits for this.
Yeah, people know In the Dark. They know Lonely as the Night, which is, they know The Stroke, My Kind of Lover. I mean, these are all huge hits.
Well, I know what I would play.
Just tell me. I love the title track.
I think Don't Say No is great. But I don't know why we pick out our favorites. You could play anything from this record, and I would like it. But I always like What Do You Want From Me? Because it's my little slide. You did that a lot live too. That was a big song in your live set for years. Yeah, but it's a good song, and it's a kind of a guitar style that I don't play a lot. And I like it.
Why do you think, real quick too, because this just hit me, around the time, and maybe you're going to say because of a song like this, there were a lot of Led Zeppelin comparisons that came out about you. I never heard that, personally. people may think I'm
I hear
nuts,
it.
but I never really heard it. Did you
I
get
hear
where
it.
it's coming from?
Yeah, I mean, Zeppelin is certainly in my collection of influences. I mean, how could you not be? No, but I think if you listen to "Lonely as the Night," there's certainly a Zeppelin. I think you can make, you can reference "Lonely as the Night" through Zeppelin, and I think "You Should Be High Love" maybe is a little bit. There might be a little bit of Robert Plant there, which is interesting because I mean I am a big Zeppelin fan, but I was not a big Robert Plant fan because I happened to be a Rod Stewart fan before Zeppelin came out, and those are the days when you were sort of in a camp,
Right?
So I mean, to me, Zeppelin couldn't hold a candle to Jeff Beck and Rod Stewart. Obviously as the years went by, that changed, and I have a lot of respect for Robert, and he's a fantastic singer. But back then I was not really out trying to emulate Robert. I might be trying to do Paul Rogers somewhere, but I can hear it if I distance myself from it. The approach I take to riffs and and singing. I mean, Jimmy's asked me a few times, who wrote that riff to this song or whatever, and I would tell him that I did, and he would be really pissed because, he just wanted me to be the singer. You can't be singing and writing that riff too.
Right.
But, that's, if he liked it that much, obviously it was something that, that he relates to. So, no, there's an affection that I have for Zeppelin, to be sure. And it's just some, phenomenal music that I don't think any of us could say that we haven't been affected by what they did.
And I wouldn't think that for a minute. And obviously, I think some of the influence of Zeppelin is obviously a lot more pronounced on from some artists than others. I mean, look, when Kingdom Come came out, everybody knew that sounded like Zeppelin. There's moments in Whitesnake that certainly sound like Zeppelin.
Absolutely.
I mean, but with you, I remember hearing that from a lot of people. Wow, it sounds like Zeppelin. And as much as I love Zeppelin as much as the next guy, it never kind of connected with me on that level. I never felt that really.
Well, I think that when you talk about certain bands, the Zeppelin influence is clearly very, very pronounced. And these bands, I wouldn't venture to speak for them, but I think with certain instances they probably were very, very much formulating what they did or basing what they did on that Zeppelin blueprint. For me, it was a bunch of influences. As I said, Zeppelin wasn't my primary influence. Probably my biggest influence, which you'd hear sometimes, but not a lot, was probably the Stones. I mean, when I was growing up, I was a Stones freak.
Well, that's what people said a lot about Piper early on. I mean, your vocal on Piper.
You can hear some of that, and you can definitely hear some of that. But, I mean, as I said, whether it's the Stones or it's Zeppelin or it's any number of singers, I had a lot of influences. And I think, again, when you find your own voice, then none of those influences is going to be prominent. So you'd say, well, I don't hear that much of Zeppelin. You probably don't, but it's part of what ends up going into the final mix. That there is something there.
And I'm laughing because it's certainly good company to be all you're not.
Absolutely,
you're not talking about stuff that's you don't want to be in that ballpark.
No, all the comparisons that are made for me are ones I can live with. Someone compares me to Zeppelin or to Queen, or it's like fine. No, I'm very, very flattered to be compared to or included in a sentence with their names in it.
Billy Squier is here. It's EddieTrunk, and we're going to play something now from the 30th anniversary edition of Don't Say No, which is available now. And Billy will give us a few more minutes here on the other side, and we'll talk. I mean, obviously, I'd love to go album by album, but that would take us a good 6-8 hours that we don't have. But I want to talk a little bit more generally about Billy's albums from this point on and the incredible impact that they have had, and also some of the ones that came out a little later that you guys may not be so aware of, but also had some brilliant stuff on it. So we'll continue with a few more minutes with Billy Squier, who is here in the studio. Coming up later in the show in our last hour, Keith Nelson, guitarist and co-founding member of Buck Cherry, will call in. The new album comes out tomorrow from those guys, so we'll spend some time with Keith in our last hour. But more with Billy Squier, but here it is from the landmark album celebrating its 30th anniversary next year, as Billy selected What Do You Want From Me?